So when we think about congressmen who are really great patriot-driven guys, and then all of a sudden you see them walk up to a line and boop, just like Johnson that allowed for the immigration, just like Johnson allowed for the omnibus bill.
He put an omnibus on the floor, he passed the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, built the FBI a new building, and gave Ukraine all this money. So what is the truth? What do you think changed?
Well, that's that silent hand, that invisible hand that came in and said, well, Bill, John, you can run your mouth as much as you want. And they say, hey, remember that time? Remember that picture? Remember that conversation? Remember that dollar you took? Remember that dollar you gave? And that's all it is.
Big General Flynn, that's the guy that was head of the intel, is telling you that congressmen and senators...
These members of both the House and the Senate get compromised by sleeping with children. These are real things. These are very real things.
That's the blackmail piece. That's what's driving a lot of this.
Think about the fact that we have children just go missing, American kids, American-born children, and no one's investigating because why? There is no will to investigate the crime they're implicated in.
I'm hearing from people that are in the know, child sacrifices skyrocketing. I'm hearing child organ harvesting skyrocketing. I know from my job, and the data is true, that there's over 600,000 kids in the last 4 years have crossed the border and been released, and they have no idea where they are.
Will the Trump administration commit to finding these children? Many of them have been lost into sex trafficking.
Many of them are dead. Many of them are dead.
Donald Trump doesn't say that off the cuff, not knowing.
Because he knows the legal repercussion if he's lying.
He knows it.
These are bad people. These are, in many cases, I believe, sick people. They're destroying our country. They're very much against me saying these things.
There is nothing American about America today. That giant central government that our founding fathers warned us ad nauseum is there. And there is no way in hell that they are voluntarily going to correct themselves.
Right. They have overstepped their bounds. They have become consumptive, and they are trying to consume us to protect their own game.
They, being the woke left, anti-Americans, rhino Republicans, have taken all of our abilities or avenues to change the government, and they've stripped them. Now they're taking us and putting us in jail.
This is what happens in the last days of a dying regime. They will never shut me up. They'll have to kill me first.
Why should I ever fear my government? My government is a public servant, and they are beholden to my wishes. And in reality, this is an abusive relationship that we all should recognize. But this communication that we're having, this conversation, the documentary you guys are putting together, is absolutely necessary to create that education, to create that shift in the needle so people actually will start to understand that the power lies in them.
All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Joshua Michael, Noncompliant America. I am your host. Make sure to go to noncompliantamerica.com or follow us on X at noncompliantAF for all the newest updates and all the cutting-edge information that most broadcasters don't want to put on the air out of fear of any kind of blowback. We are in the heart of the lion's den, behind enemy lines here in FEMA Region 10. But this is important information for the you people that are listening. You guys have to understand, as all this great stuff's happening around the country, we are behind enemy territory. We are in a communist state. The state of Oregon is completely captured. And that goes in tandem with a lot of people are wondering why Donald Trump is not on the ballot. He's going to be on the ballot, excuse me. He's not on the voter pamphlet. And he didn't submit anything to be put in the voter pamphlet. Why would he do that for the state of Oregon and not want to be represented by the people and or give his information? I think there's a couple strategies behind that. One, he understands that Oregon is lost and absolutely corrupt and virtually hopeless in regards to his campaign and his winning, which is why he hasn't come here at all. He hasn't toured here. He's in California right now today. But what would be the reasoning for him doing that? I think that it's kind of a show of strength, showing that he doesn't need to do the debates. He doesn't need to put his information on the ballot. He's literally on every news feed every single day, and he has been for virtually 9 years. So if anybody doesn't know who Donald Trump is or what he stands for or what he's about, they're literally living under a rock. And he also knows that a little pamphlet on information about him isn't going to sway anybody at this point. Because at this point, if you don't understand what Trump is and what he stands for and who he represents, then you never will. You absolutely never will. It's never going to get through to your mind. And now more and more people are realizing that they've been duped by the media. They've been duped by the government. They've been duped by Congress, the FBI, the FBI, the CIA, all these groups that have effectively tried to discredit Trump in every way. They live cheated and stole so many times. It's very difficult to actually account for how many times that's happened. But I digress, because the fact of the matter is that there's been an absolute surge in his popularity, and people are really coming to the table and realizing, hey, Kamala has no policy. She doesn't know how to talk. She's really boring. She's probably one of the most boring candidates, ever to be listed and ever be on the national stage. And we don't want that. She's not even distinguishing herself between Joe Biden. She never said, hey, I'm going to do something a little bit different than the Biden administration. I'm going to close the border. I'm going to, bring jobs back. I'm going to do this. She's not talking about actual policy. If you look at the Colbert interview, Colbert asks her, he's like, hey, so what's the difference between you and Joe Biden? Or what are you going to do differently? And she says, well, first of all, I'm not Joe Biden, and I'm definitely not Donald Trump. It's like, okay, you didn't answer the question. So it's just really interesting that she's even has any type of headway, but it just goes to show the machine can literally prop up a meat sandwich and make it a contender in a presidential election. If you have enough money, if you have enough power, if you have enough resources, you can prop this up. Now, they're simply propping up with fake polls and all this nonsense. Most people aren't buying it. And the reality is we're all so compartmentalized within our echo chambers and our systems that we actually kind of start to believe that this is going to be a close race. But if you take your glasses off and you look around, there's no way that she's even in a close race. But that just means that they're going to steal it. And I want to talk about that today. I want to talk about FEMA and the importance of FEMA, what it is, what it's supposed to be used for on its face versus what it's actually going to be used for. Now, something's resurged. There's a book called Behold the Pale Horse. I think I've told you guys it's by William Cooper. I want to read a little excerpt from it that I think's very important to realize. So, he wrote this book in 1991, keep in mind. So some of this stuff is definitely old. It's very, very old. It's over 30 years old. And he talks about different plans that they're going to utilize. So if the country declares itself a national emergency, something happens, massive power blackout, COVID, you guys all know COVID, right? Or schools start getting bombed or shooting up all over the country, because I think they're going to activate their people. The Democrats are going to activate the illegals that have been shoveling in through the border for quite some time. In the next couple weeks, they need the emergency. Now let's talk about this. It's called the National Emergency Total Takeover, right? This is HR 4079 and FEMA. So on April 20th, 1967, after a rapid and thorough investigation, Mr. Cooper filed a suit on behalf of the people of the United States in various personnel that had a key part in the conspiratorial program to do away with the United States as we know it. So the exact situation that he's going to present at this time is the Center for Study for Democratic Institutions recently completed a proposed constitution for the new states of America. It's the center of a Rockefeller-funded program. To give you an indication of this type of constitutional proposed, the term national emergency is mentioned 134 times. The document did not have a Bill of Rights to have your ability to own arms. All your arms will be taken away. At the same time, House Concurrent Resolution number 28 awaited for calling a constitutional convention on or before July 4th, 1967. The presiding officer, such as an event, would be Nelson Rockefeller, the vice president at the time. This particular resolution awaited in committee. Obviously, money would not be spent on these massive programs unless there'd be a chance for an actual implementation of such scheme. So what does this mean? Simply means they can use an emergency order to implement FEMA. Once the emergency takes effect, the president is actually no longer the president. The one who controls all of the executive orders is the president and the head of FEMA. And then they will be implementing, potentially, this is what they're going to try to do. So remember how they always talked about in 2020, 2019, leading up to the election, if Trump gets elected, we're just going to hold our own elections somewhere else. You remember hearing about that? They were simply going to initiate a coup against the government, outside of law, and implement their own government. Now, how will they do that? There's much more in life than a free country than paying your mortgage. You have to be aware of what is going on accordingly to participate in the government. In that, get involved in examining an organizational chart, Executive Order number 11490, to discover how we have helped finance, through our tax dollars, the mechanics to overthrow the Constitution. Executive Order 11490 designates certain authorities to the Office of Emergency Preparedness, which turn designates authority to the various departments of the federal government. In other words, it gives them the authority to dictate. If this order were implemented, the Post Office Department would be responsible for a national registration. Where have we heard this before? Where have we heard this before? I think the biggest Trojan horse that nobody's talking about right now, the largest Trojan horse, is this Real ID program that all the states are getting ready to implement by May of 2025. The Real ID has been in the works for many, many, many years, and now they're doing the same thing that they did during COVID. Do you know how many people I know that got the COVID shot just so they could fly on an airplane? Why are they doing that? Why are they rolling out what is Real ID? And what does it even mean? That is the Trojan horse that nobody's talking about. That's the new system that's going to collaborate with the CBDC banking system. Are you starting to see the pattern? Are you starting to see the warning signs? Are you starting to see the slithering elements of tyranny? Which is why this is the most important election in history ever. For the integrity of the United States to exist and move on, we need to have Donald Trump and all of his elected officials that he is selected this time, that are going to represent and purge the government drastically of these tyrannical systems and tentacles. And I think one of the biggest allies that he has right now, well, two, would be Elon Musk and RFK Jr. RFK Jr. has been in the weeds fighting these people, rooting them out, suing them, dealing with them in the court systems, and fighting like hell. So, the National Registration Database coming from the post office, i.e. the Real ID system in today's terms, because remember, this is written in 1991. State Department would be responsible for the protection of the United Nations personnel or property. The United Nations, not the United States. It's getting crazy, folks. It's getting wild. The Commerce Department will be responsible for the exportation and selection of the international distribution of commodities, which would be the actual looting of the United States. Census information and resources. They will be exporting it to the UN. We'll get more into this on the other side. You're listening to Joshua Michael, Non-Compliant America. It's time to get ready, folks, because we're going to have another COVID 2.0 type scenario coming up.
It's time to unmask the truth and expose the lies. The occupied forces do not want you to hear this broadcast. Breaking through the censorship and delivering raw, unedited content. It's Joshua Michael with Non-Compliant America.
Girls talk about the social lives.
All right, Joshua Michael, we're back on the second segment. Talking about implementing a new government and what these dark secret plans, when you look around and wonder, why are they rolling out a real ID system? Why are they trying to crash the banking system? Why are they creating so much inflation and stealing our wealth and giving it to foreign nations and the UN and the World Economic Forum and all these nonprofits? Why would they be doing that if they weren't trying to loot the country? Now, as much as y'all like to run away from this, you're not going to get away from it. So it's better just to recognize it and realize how you can play your part within this revolution that's happening and a resurgence of America. Because rest assured, I guarantee you it's happening everywhere. More and more people, I just talked to a family yesterday. They said they had their baby at their house. They don't trust hospitals. And their child got no vaccines. Zero. None. Because they don't trust the system anymore. And before, they have a couple other kids. They didn't do that with their other kids. Something has clicked in your mind. And people are starting to realize how they've been fooled. And how everything about their world that they think that they know is being subverted, extorted, and abused. The government is not here to protect you. They're not here to preserve your wealth. They're not here to do any of that. There's a rogue government now that is occupying the United States. And that's what Donald Trump stands against. Now, one of the great things on this whole war that we're fighting is as overwhelming as it can be. There's a massive amount of victories happening. And one of the ones that I think is really important to recognize is more recently, the FDA has spoke out and stated that if you put fluoride in the water, it actually lowers the IQ in children. Now, the judge that recognized this and has forced the FDA to come out with new rules, I'll let this guy explain it, but this is a huge victory. And these are the types of things, these are the type of soldiers, the silent soldiers, the quiet soldiers that are fighting back against this system. Because what's that going to do for our community? What's Salem doing, the city of Salem, going to do about taking water fluoridation now that they know that they are exceeding fluoride levels against the FDA standards, against what's recommended? And now it's also been confirmed having that in your water actually lowers your IQ. What are they going to do? Well, I would expect that whoever's operating the Water Bureau, we need to put pressure on them. This is how we take things back, because here is the domino effect that comes from that. You start taking the fluoride out of the water, people's pineal gland, which it drastically affects, starts to cleanse itself and detox from the slum-like brain fog that everybody's operating in. Do you ever walk around and look around at people and be like, how do you not see the things going on? How are you guys in such a simulation that you just can't see what's happening? And why aren't you taking more control of your life? Why aren't you taking more accountability? Why aren't you speaking out against this? They don't want confrontation. They don't want this. They don't want to feel weird. They don't want to seem, crazy around their friends. But it's not so crazy anymore. Talking about all these things that have always been conspiracies, it's not so crazy anymore, is it? It's all coming out. It's all coming out. But if we can push to get the fluoride out of the water, more and more people, I think, will detox from these toxic chemicals, the coffees that they drink. And you go to Starbucks. I always go, and anytime I go to any coffee shop, I said, hey, do you guys filter your water? They're like, what? I was like, you guys got fluoride in your water. I'm not going to come here until you start taking it out. And you show me that you take it out, and it's easy to take it out. There's a couple different ways you can do it, which is why I got that water distiller. Still waiting for that guy to call me back. He's extremely busy. His name's Brandon. He says he's had a huge boom in supplies and he hasn't been able to come on. But I want to talk about the importance of cleaning your water, even if you're on a well. Massive amounts of glyphosates, things in the ground, all the chemtrails that they're spraying. All that stuff is getting into the water table, so it's very important to filter your water. But this is a huge victory on the moving the window on getting the fluoride out of the water. Take a listen.
On April 17th, 2023, I posted a reel called Fluoride Dumbing Down Your Kids. It drew an immediate response from Instagram that the information could mislead people. My reel presented evidence that fluoridated waters consistently associated with lower IQs in children. Well, just last week, a federal judge agreed with me in a ruling that could very possibly end the fluoridation of water in the U.S. Specifically, the court found that fluoridation of water at 0.7 milligrams per liter, the level that's presently considered optimal in the U.S., poses an unreasonable risk of reduced IQ in children. The court did not go so far as to definitively say that fluoride causes lower IQ in children. Federal Judge Edward Chen took 7 years to issue his ruling, largely because he wanted to wait for the results of a 6-year systematic review by the National Toxicology Program on the state and science concerning fluoride exposure in neurodevelopment and cognition. In the end, the judge found that the EPA did not follow its own default margin of error policy that requires a difference of a factor of 10 between the lowest level that shows harm and the level we expose people to. 4 milligrams per liter has been accepted as the lowest level of exposure that the factor of 10 is calculated from. So according to their own policy, that would put the exposure at 0.4 milligrams per liter, significantly lower than the current 0.7 that the CDC recommends. And the court ordered the EPA to initiate rulemaking to that effect. How they'll implement that order remains to be seen. Although these findings are authoritative, they're not binding on water companies and municipalities. Local communities make the final decisions on the fluoridation of water. So watch and see what actions your water supplier takes in light of these findings. In the meantime, if you don't want fluoride in your drinking water, you have to filter it out using either reverse osmosis, distillation, or ion exchange. I would do that if you're pregnant or if you have young children based on this information in this case. I'm not opposed to supplementing fluoride. I want to be clear about that. This is a personal choice, but I do remain opposed to the mass drugging of a population. It's hard to give personal consent to something added to the community
and
waters.
What about the people that drink more water than regular people? They're drugging you. Notice that he said drugging. It is a drug, it's a toxic waste, and they're actually poisoning us to keep us docile. We'll be right back.
If the road were easy, everyone would take it. We don't shy away from challenges. We dive in. And now, live from an undisclosed location in FEMA Region 10, it's your host, Joshua Michael.
All right, welcome back, folks. Joshua Michael. Jam-packed show. As always, it's best to be prepared. It's best to get ready. It's better to have it, not need it, not have it. Right? So, going back into the kind of our survival for the future and the survival for the future chaos that may or may not happen. Who knows? Things seem pretty calm right now, right? But they can turn on a dime. And these predators that have captured this government are not going to let it go and slip out of their fingers if they can help it, which means mass unrest. Mass unrest. There was an official that contracts with FEMA. He breaks down a video. I posted on my X. You can follow me at noncompliantAF, all one word, or go to noncompliantamerica.com. Like and subscribe and share this show because it's your support and it's getting this message out that is going to help our community. The Calvary is not coming. You are the Calvary, whether you recognize it or not. It's only up to us in order to preserve what may or may not happen in the near future. FEMA is expecting mass civil unrest to happen in the next couple weeks. City of Portland has already announced they're expecting mass civil unrest in the next couple weeks. What does that mean? Does that mean we're going to have another Donald Trump victory? Only if we can vote. So the Portland Police Bureau is training its rapid response team in anticipation of large crowds during the election and on and around the election. But we haven't seen much activity going on right now. The head official said that we've been building slowly, building through training and getting them to this point. So almost as they've been expecting it. Now the Rose City Antifa, where are they at? They've been pretty dormant. They've been pretty quiet. But they didn't bring the masks back. They don't have the masks back in Portland. California does. I think it's about 3 or 4 counties have initiated the masks starting November 1st. They're going to require masks for all medical facilities, hospitals, any outlier hospitals. So what are they getting prepared for? And what are they masking people for? Back in June, the city of Portland leaders, including Mr. Ted Wheeler, Police Chief Bob Day announced the reinforcement of the Rapid Response Team that is specialized. It's a specialized unit with the Portland Police Department that responds to riots and other public order events. Now, who's going to be rioting? Who's going to be rioting? Could it be more paid insurgents? Could it be the migrant gangs dressed as Antifa? What could it be? I don't know, but they're getting ready for that. So what do they know that we don't? Jack Posobiec dropped yesterday on the Alex Jones show. He stated that there was a memo that went out to most head officials in all the states and county municipalities, urging them to be prepared for major civil unrest. Now, things seem pretty calm right now. Things seem pretty calm. There's no controlled chaos like what was happening during 2020 leading up to the election. They're kind of running out of time because before it was a buildup into the controlled chaos to where it was kind of acclimated into the culture where people were kind of starting to accept it, and they ramped it up and ramped it up and ramped it up. And then the election happened and it was like, oh my gosh. Then they stole it, boarded up the windows, snuck in all the ballots, brought in all the fake ballots. And that's been absolutely uncovered. So what are they going to do this time? That's the better question. So Dan Bongino came out the other day and he gave a dire warning on his show. Shout out to Dan. I like listening to Dan. He's pretty over the target. He's pretty solid. I think he has a lot of regret for taking the vaccine, and he realized he's been duped, and he's probably not the right guy you want to try to screw over or put him on your bad side. So I like Dan because he seems very authentic to me. He does still skate around certain political lines, you know, for whatever reason. There's certain things that he wouldn't talk about when it was going on last year, you know, which is kind of like, yeah, okay, you know, we get it. You know, maybe you're getting some threats or something like that. But more importantly, I feel like he's pretty over the target. But he gave a dire warning for people to get prepared. And take a listen to this because it's quite interesting. It's not coming from me. This is Dan Bongino. Take a listen.
You should have some Faraday bags in your house to protect against an EMP, number one. You can put these EMP protection devices on your car in your home. You should have a generator. Just after the Generac debacle, I cannot recommend this company yesterday. What a mess. You should have a generator. You should have an extra supply of gasoline, safely stored, of course. Be very careful with that. You should obviously have water filtration, and you should have a way to bottle water, if not bottle water itself. You should have firearms. You should have ammunition that works and properly stored. You should have potassium iodide. You should have water disinfectants and actual disinfectants, alcohol peroxide. You should have a stash of antibiotics. We've had multiple sponsors with that product, and other companies do it too. Folks, please be prepared. You should have a way, you should have some buckets and some barrels to store some water. You should be able to survive for 3 to 6 months on your own. I may sound crazy, But folks, I'm telling you, if they wipe out our grid, the only crazy people are going to be the ones crazily knocking at your door asking for your food.
Yeah. So that was Dan Bongino. So what's the common theme here? What's the common theme going on? Is getting prepared. Getting prepared. It's always good to be prepared, don't you think? It's good to be prepared for financial issues. It's good to be prepared for anything, but the essentials like food, water, self-protection, and things like that. One of the books that I'm going to dive into called The Civil Defense Manual. This is volume 2. It's by Jack Lawson. Phenomenal job putting together on his backstory and where he got a lot of this information. He goes through different ways to survive and different ways to prepare with things that you have at your disposal and how to protect yourself. So one of the things is the EMPs. There's been some reports going on prior to the hurricane that when people were getting ready to evacuate in North Carolina and Florida, this is where these reports are coming from, that their cars would not start. In other words, their batteries went out. Now, how do you protect yourself? They make little EMP devices that you can hook up to your battery that basically absorb the shock if it were to happen. These could be natural phenomenons, or they could be, some type of directed energy weapon specifically designed around that. So if you have batteries laying around, it's very important that you put them in some type of Faraday EMP bag. Now, you can get these. These are pretty expensive. There's some still kind of more cheap, ineffective ways to do this and to create those things, but it's better to, if you have a way to wrap these batteries and protect them, they could be a life or death situation. One thing is, if you have an old truck or an old car, pre-1970s, it's carbureted, you can pull the battery out and just wrap it in an EMP bag and just leave it there ready to where if you need to get out, you need to get away, you'll still be able to do that. Or like a dirt bike, that's kickstart. You could have some type of mode of transportation at least, aside from maybe getting a horse, which most people aren't going to be able to get a horse right now. Those are some different ways that you can prepare. Now, one of the other things that he talked about was stocking up on gasoline. If you're going to stock up with gasoline, there's a couple things you got to remember. There's winter gas and summer gas, and they're a little bit different mixtures to weather the storm and everything else. Typically, when you're storing gasoline, you're going to want to get the non-ethanol stuff. It's going to store a little bit better, but it also has about a year to maybe year and a half shelf life. There's little treatments that you can do to preserve that. My recommendation is, if you could afford it, is to try to get a small diesel generator, because diesel is going to store a lot better than gasoline. You're not going to worry about having bad gas if you finally need it, and you can store for long periods of time. Myself, I have plenty of diesel engines around me in all accounts, because I like to store diesel. It's a better engine. It is more expensive, but it's very important to be able to have those resources. There's a lot of reports in Tampa. There's a guy I know who was in Florida, just right next to Tampa before the hurricane. He said all the gas stations didn't have any more gas, so he could not leave. And so he had to weather the storm. Fortunately, it wasn't a big storm, but he couldn't find any gas, and he didn't prepare. He didn't have any gas or diesel available. So it's important to get all that stuff, stock up on that stuff. Yes, food is very important, but clean drinking water, modes of transportation, means to protect yourself. Shortwave radios is really good to have. Even if you aren't collaborating with your neighbors yet, if things go down, you can just walk over there and create some communication. So we got a short period of time, folks. Got one more segment coming up. I'm Joshua Michael, Non-Compliant America. We'll be right back.
We working hard for this money.
Sleeping giant is waking up. More and more people are understanding the importance of being prepared. Talk a little bit more about preparation, electric generators, and EMPs. This is an excerpt, chapter 37 on page 820 for the Civil Defense Manual. It says if you're going to construct any type of EMP protection that does need a ground connection, make sure that it's extremely good quality ground. If you don't know how to do a ground, check this out. You can go to Home Depot right now. You can get something called a grounding rod. They're very difficult to put in. They make these little attachments on an impact drill where you can drill that into the ground. They're like 6 or 8 feet tall posts that you drill just straight into the ground. It's pretty hard to do, but that'll give you a solid ground. If the soil is dry, rock, or otherwise likely of poor conductivity, proprietary commercial grounding compounds are available to enhance the continuity of the ground rod on the earth. Bentonite is a material that is widely used in the drilling industry that can greatly enhance conductivity between the ground system and the earth. I've found that bentonite to be very effective as a grounding material. For most people, bentonite is easier to obtain and much more practical than a proprietary commercial grounding compound such as a grounding rod. Bentonite, you can pick up bags of it for pretty cheap. Strangely enough, I actually use it in a pond to seal up the holes in the cracks in the pond to keep it from leaking. You can sprinkle bentonite in there, and that'll seal the pond. So if you have an in-ground pond or water supply that doesn't seem to be retaining water, bentonite is a very simple, cheap solution to put in there, and it's harmful on the aquatic life that's living in there, but it does help seal that up if you were just to dig a hole and fill it with water, and that's the best that you can. Or if you have running water near you, maybe scratching off a little bit of that into some type of pond or pump system that you can utilize and filter out. You may or may not need that. If it's not feasible to bury a grounding rod vertically, a fairly good grounding rod can be made by digging a trench as long and deep as feasible. Then place flexible copper tubing, such as a used plumbing trench, covering the copper tubing with bentonite and other grounding compounds, covering it with topsoil, then using above ground part of the copper tubing for a ground connection. So simply just run the copper tubing down through the ground, sprinkle some bentonite on it, and then put your topsoil on it, and then bend it up so you have it sticking out of the ground so you can use it. So interesting to me, the elements of electricity and different experiments that I've done with electricity. You know, we really thrive off electricity. I think it's one of the greatest inventions of the modern history, aside from like soap and different things like that. But it's so interesting how you're able to get grounding elements from just sticking a pipe in the ground, and it gives you a ground, you know. But then you can create a positive connection. There's this guy who did an experiment online. I know I'm kind of getting off here, but what he did is he had a drone. He tied a little piece of copper, just a copper wire, like a welding wire, and it was about 400 feet long. And then he took his drone and he pulled it all the way up about 400 feet. And he tied that to a positive element on a battery. And then he shoved a grounding rod in the ground, tied that to the negative, and he was getting, I don't remember how many amps, but he was getting electricity out of the air, you know, because we have magnetism, we have all these things in the world that we're just so unaware of. Sometimes we get caught up in our modern lifestyle and we think electricity only comes from one thing, when really it's all around us. It's really interesting. So he talks about best EMP shields would be alternating layers of steel and aluminum or copper with insulating material, separating the layers of metal. This is how some of the best electromagnetic shields buildings are actually constructed. The main problem with consumer steel enclosures is that they are usually painted to resist corrosion. The paint is an electrical insulator that keeps the steel from really electrically surrounding the objects inside. So make sure not to paint if you're making some type of EMP shield. This can be any shape or size. Again, if you have an old vehicle, something like that, I'd recommend charging up that battery really good, checking on it every couple months, pulling it out of the box, and making a box to put that in, because that may or may not be a life or death situation if an EMP were to happen. So, galvanized garbage can lid works fairly well as an EMP shield, but the painted steel cabinet provides only minimal protection. A properly constructed Faraday shield, may be made from stainless steel, can be very effective. Now he gets into UPS systems, which I'll go into really quickly, which are uninterrupted power supplies. What that is that's like a battery backup. I know it's really common in offices to have, battery backup on their networking system. If the power surges or goes out, it jumps right over to the battery real quick. Now they do have household models. I have a beta one that was made by Renology that is for your house. And it has a 30 amp circuit on it. And you can actually run your generator, your gas power generator, through it. It'll charge the batteries and it'll pull power from the batteries, but it'll also run through to power your house. And the reason we would do that, or something like that, now you can make these pretty fairly simply. Renology has a great website that you can go on to do, off-grid stuff. Another thing is, if you know people that live in Montana or Wyoming, somewhere out in the country, I know Dennis Lithicum actually lives off the grid. He's not on the power grid, and he's been doing this for 20, 30 years. And there's different ways to do it, but I like that because you can still run all the lights in your house and you don't have to have a generator running all night. And if you have LED lights in your house, it's very important because those are going to pull little to none electricity. You can run them off a 12-volt car battery and still have lights and operating things in your house. Obviously not the furnace or anything giant like that, but that's where wood fireplaces, wood fire stoves come into hand, for those cold winter nights, which I think we're going to have a cold one. It's good to have wood-burning fireplaces in your house, just in case you need to all bundle up into that one room and sleep by the fire. You can get some lights on, and then that way people also don't know that you have a generator and or your home. Because that's another thing, that's another downside of the generators, is they're very loud. No matter what you do to them, they're going to be very loud, and people are definitely going to hear that. And if they hear a generator going on and they're cold and they're hungry and they need food, guess where they're going? They're going where that generator's running. So those are little tips for you guys. I hope it's helpful. I appreciate you listening to my show and supporting me. You can go to noncompliantamerica.com or follow me on X, which is the best. If you want to send me a message, follow me on X at noncompliantaf. Hit me up, or you can email me, jm@noncompliantamerica.com. We're getting into the last days, folks. Make sure, even though Donald Trump didn't put his name or name in the pamphlet, we got to vote for him. We got to show him that Oregon is still alive and Oregon is still here, and we need all of our help to do that. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.